Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you two really cool puzzles. This first one, it is white to move and win. Not just any win, checkmate in 2. Can you find the checkmate in 2 for the white pieces? While you're trying to find the answer to this, let me quickly encourage you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity, so every like, every subscriber helps me out so much. Okay, let's talk about the solution here. So it's white to move, and I know you might say, they're up so much material, what's the point? Well, I think it's a cool exercise to optimize your pieces as much as possible, and we have a few pieces on the board here, so let's see how we can best optimize to win in the fastest time. I think that's kind of cool. So maybe, if you're like me, you thought queen g1, queen g3, maybe a check move like this, but then you realize you can't do it. So let's start with maybe queen g1. Looks like a nice move. Unfortunately, it's not mate in 2 because rook f2 can block, and you can even take this, but they have an out square, right? So it doesn't work. So you say, okay, it can't be that, and you kind of start searching for moves. So maybe a check, and then you realize it can get captured, but maybe that frees up a square. Good idea, but they can always block, right? Kind of, that's the fun part about solving puzzles. This is mate, by the way, but it's mate in 3. So you say, okay, what other options do I have? What other checks do I have? So maybe you start thinking about rook checks, or maybe this knight can check. So this rook check is really the only check available. Doesn't seem sensible at all, because they can just take it, and I can't approach the king in any way, because there's a lot of coverage there. So you have to kind of rule out these moves one by one. And one thing that helped me was I looked at the knight on b6 and also the knight on h4, and I started kind of mapping out the squares that this piece was covering. And I thought, okay, that's cool. And this rook covering these, and this king is covering these. And I thought, okay, I really want e4 and e5 to be covered. It'd be nice if I can cover e4. And then I thought, what piece could do that? How can I do that? So a queen move would cover e4, maybe something like this, maybe something that's not hanging the queen directly, so maybe, and then you start wondering, well, if I go here, it hangs the queen. Not with that diagonal, it hangs the queen this way. If I go here, it hangs the queen. If I go here, it hangs the queen. If I go here, it hangs the queen in 3 different directions, 1, 2, 3. And then you start realizing, let's look at deeper into those moves. And the most forcing move is the one that you always want to check first, right? So that's what leads to the solution, believe it or not. So the solution here is queen to e4. What a crazy move. So you make this move, really with the attempt to rule it out, because it feels crazy. And then you realize, well, if the king were to take, I actually do have mate here. I have rook e2 mate, because like I mentioned, now the king is on this e file, and all these squares are covered, and of course the rook covering these two, including the one the king is on. And you go, okay, well that's convenient, but the king doesn't have to take. So maybe in your calculation you say, what if the rook takes? And then again you kind of realize, well, that was their one out square. So now I can play knight d5, and that's mate, because the king is covering this, knights are covering this, and the rooks are covering, or the one rook, covering the second rank. And then you go, okay, that's cool. If the king were to take, or the rook were to take, I have mate. But they can still capture with the bishop. Well, happily, you can actually win the game here. Mate in 1, can you find it? This knight goes where? Takes the pawn, c4, mate. Look at the symmetry here, these knights covering these squares, and the rook cutting across the second rank. So it's a super cool puzzle, and this stunning move just flies out of nowhere, and there's nothing else to do, right? You can't run away because the rook is covering, and you can't run away here or here because the queen is covering. So really, the only thing you can do is pick how you want to lose. You can pick, you want to lose with the bishop, rook, or king. Super cool puzzle. But that is the first one of two. Let's move on to the second one. Okay, another odd puzzle. It's white to play and win. The goal is to see if you can find the checkmate in 3. It's quite hard. So if you want to take a second, feel free to pause the video. No pressure though, because it is already kind of challenging. So what I found interesting about this puzzle is I was convinced it was something like Queen D6, maybe Queen H5, maybe something like Queen A4. And then I realized it doesn't really work, because if I do something like Queen D6, it feels like the right idea because I'm trying to create some blockade, but the king just gets out, and even if I try to check them like this, it doesn't work. They just get back in. So there's always this border. So I was like, okay, how do I do this? And then you start wondering, what if I play a move that prevents them from running this way? And then you realize there isn't much of the move. Like, you can play Queen C2, but they just play King E5, and it feels like you're never making progress. You're just chasing them around the board. So I'm not going to share exactly how to solve every detail of this, kind of show the answer and let you figure it out in terms of how to understand it. But the first move is a bishop move. I'll tell you that. The bishop move is the F bishop. In particular, it is a bishop to C4. Now, what is this move doing? It's cutting off these squares. Great. But those squares are already cut off. Really what this is doing is it's creating a net. And now the king has two choices. F5 here or E5 there. So let's say the king wants to run away, which is kind of what you'd expect, which would be F5. What's cool about this move is I can now play Queen F3 check. And now, look at these squares. The king is kind of a little short on squares here. If they go to G6, which looks like it's the right move, surprisingly, the bishops coordinate, and with the queen, bang, that is mate. Look, it's like a little dovetail kind of mate. Isn't that kind of weird? Okay, what if the king goes the other way? Instead of going to G6, if they go to E5, well, now the bishop placement makes more sense, because now it's the same dovetail pattern the other way. This kind of thing. That's the dovetail pattern I'm talking about. And now the bishop makes sense why he went here, because it's covering that out square. Okay, but one question you might have is, what if they don't go to F5? What if instead they go to E5? Okay, let's look at it. E5. Queen D5 check. So right in the face of the king. King only has one square. F6. It's always good to look at those forcing moves. Can you find the mate in 1 here? It sounds easy because it's mate in 1, but I find it to be challenging sometimes. Maybe in 4 seconds, 3 seconds you can solve it. Queen to G5 mate. Same pattern. So it's pretty cool the way these bishops, especially this one on C1, it didn't move, but it played a role in that other line. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. 2 cool puzzles to show a friend. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like I said in the beginning, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us out so much. But that is it for now. Thank you for watching. Bye.